All right, welcome back everybody to another video here by Board Game Breakdown. And this time we are going to be looking at the 2024 release of River of Gold. All right, so this game takes place in this Land of the Five Rings story, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what that is. It comes with this little thing that I guess explains where you can learn more about the story. I guess maybe they're books or graphic novels or something. But if you know about it, then put a comment down there and let the rest of us know more about this. But this board game takes place in whatever universe that is, and you're really going to be going down this river, trying to do some building of buildings and trading and things of that nature. So before we get started with that, if you want a shorter video that just kind of shows you an overview of what this game will bring to your table, then click this link here for our burst version. It's going to be probably 3 or 4 minutes. It'll quickly go over the game and what you can expect from it. But if you want a full kind of how to play video, then stay right here for this. We'll do a setup. We'll go over the turns, basically what actions you're going to take in a turn. I'll play a few turns, kind of show you some of the symbols and icons used. Then we'll discuss scoring and the unofficial solo mode at the end. So like I said, you're going to be traveling down this river, gaining influence with these different regions and hoping to make the most money. All right, so before we get right into the video, please make sure to go subscribe right now to our YouTube channel, and you can go to our website at boardgamebreakdown.com, check out other reviews, videos, things of that nature. But without further ado, let's jump right into River of Gold. All right, welcome to the video. So we're going to jump into the setup here of River of Gold. And I'm going to be setting it up for 2 players, but I will mention a few of the changes you've got to make to do 3 or 4 players. There is no official solo variant, but there is a really nice one posted on Board Game Geek. So I might talk about that quickly at the very end of the video in the last chapter. But we will just start out here with a 2-player mode, and I'm going to first start out discussing what you need to set up for the main board here. So you see I've got it laid out, and you can orientate it multiple different ways that fit on your table, but it is kind of long or wide depending on how you look at it. So we'll just keep it like that for right now. You should be able to tell what's going on with this. Pretty simple. So what we're going to do first is really put out some building tiles and then put out some influence starting tiles. So we'll look at the building tiles first. So a building tile is going to be shaped such as this. So it's got kind of a flat side over here, a pointy side here. They usually have the same, I think they all have the same exact thing on each side. And then this artwork here is going to be different depending on what kind of building tile it is. So these here are called imperial markets, and you're going to have 3. Okay, and so there's 3 spots on the river. I'll focus back down here, and you will see there's one here, there's one here, there's one here. So each game, no matter how many people are playing, you're going to just shuffle up these 3 little tiles, and then you'll just sit them out here, and you'll see that obviously there's a pointed side and there's a flat side. So just make sure that you are putting them facing the right way, or the game might not make much sense. The second thing is going to be the starter builder tiles. And you're going to see that the building tiles come in 3 different colors. So we already talked about the green ones, which are markets. Those are imperial markets, but there will be normal markets throughout the game. This red, these are shrines. The blue are ports, and the orange are manors. So the big difference in them is that what the building gives you, and also there are some end of the game goals sometimes where you try to collect 3 of the same color or 1 of every color. So you're going to just shuffle these up, and on the board you're going to see places that are marked sometimes with a player count. So like for example, this says 2, this says 2 or 3. So basically for a 2-player game, you're going to randomly draw these and fill them up. And there's going to be 6 spots. We're going to put them on both the 2s and the 2 3s. If you're playing with 3-player, you're only going to place them on where it says 3. And with a 4-player game, you're not going to use any of these starting tiles. So shuffle them up, and I'll come over here and just place them in all the different spots that have a 2 on them. And this is just a way to have buildings out there when we start playing that we can visit instead of having an empty river. All right. So the next type of building is going to be the building tiles that the players can purchase and place out there. And there are going to be 2 different categories. So there's going to be Era 1 that has 1 little dot there. And then there's also going to be Era 2 with 2 dots. All right, so you're going to separate those, which I have already done so. And then you're going to take your Era 1 and you're going to fill up the market down here. And then you're going to grab this, which is called the building board. And you're going to place it somewhere over here. We'll put it up here because I'm going to put my player boards there. And it's got a space for Era 1 and a space for Era 2. And you're going to check the instruction manual and see how many more tiles you got to put out. So I know in a 2-player game, we need a total of 12 Era 1. So we've got 4 here. So we're going to count out 8 more and place them on Era 1. And then I know for a 2-player game, we need 9 Era 2 tiles. So we'll put that here. And it's important to have the right amount because that is going to be how the end game is triggered as we work through those tiles. So all the other Era 1 and the Era 2 tiles that are left over, we're going to just go place them back in the box since we do not need them. So you can see there's quite a bit of tiles left. So there's a good variety as far as what tiles are going to come out each game. All right, the other thing about the main board I mentioned were these influence scoring tiles. So you're going to have 6 because you have 6 different regions down here that you're going to be gaining influence in. And I will show you one of the tiles. For example, this one will have a 2-player side. Let me focus. Have a 2-player side, and then the other side will be for 3 to 4 players. So you're just going to shuffle these up, and then you're going to place them on these different regions with the right side, depending on your player count, facing upwards. So I'm going to do that at this point. Just place them out here. I'll go into more explanation as far as exactly what these do for you in the game when we get into the gameplay. You will have a deck of customer cards. The back sides look like this. The front sides look like that. You just need to shuffle those up, place them to the side for right now. And then the game comes with 6 of these end of game goals. And you're going to shuffle them up and you're going to choose 3 of them. We'll do those 3. We're just going to sit them in a pile for right now up there. We'll come back to discussing exactly what those do and what they mean when we get into the gameplay. But for right now, for the setup, we just need to know we need 3 of those. All right, so lastly, there's just some resources to grab. You're going to have money, and in this game there it's called koku. So you have 5 denominations and single denominations. So I'm just going to place those over here. The 5 are off the board. You don't really need to see those. And then you have 3 main resources that you'll be trading in for different things or to complete customer deliveries. So you have porcelain, you have rice, and you have silk. All right. So let's see if I can. You know what? We'll just put the silk off to the side. You guys know how resources work in games. You don't need to see every little bit of resource. All right, so that is basically what you need to do for this. Now for your individual player boards, each person is going to grab one of these player mats. There's 4 different kinds for 4 different clans. The backsides are got some little story bits on them, but the clans are basically the same except for whatever color they represent. This side, besides the artwork and stuff, is the same. So we're going to be playing with the Crab Clan, which is like the navy blue color, and we're going to play with the Crane Clan, which is the white color. Okay, so I'm going to make it so you can basically see the Crab Clan here. The Crane Clan will be off to the side because they're not going to really do anything differently in the grand scheme of things compared to the Crab Clan. So I'll just discuss that as we go. For your board to start out with, you do have a little track over here. This is for the let's see, what's it called? Divine Favor. And it's just going to be a way to make it so that you can mitigate bad dice rolls by changing the dice. So everyone is going to get one of these little yellow Divine Favor gems, and they're going to start on level 2. So I'm also putting one on level 2 of the Crane Clan. And then you're going to get one of these, which kind of makes it so you have a maximum amount of favor you can do. And that's going to go over the 3, so kind of in between the 3 and the 4. So the maximum you can get is 3 at the beginning of the game. You'll see how we raise that up. You're going to get all of your pieces here that come with the whatever color you're using. So you will have a token like this for the score, and that will go over here on the 0. You'll have 2 standard boats. And another thing about the clans is each of their boats is kind of shaped differently, so that's kind of neat. So on the board they look different compared to each other, but essentially they're just boats. And you're going to start them out one on this river space, and you know that because it has a boat icon, and the other at the very top. You will also have a upgraded ship that will be larger. You're just going to keep this to the side for right now. You might use it depending on the things you get into on the game. And then you're going to have a bunch of these little tokens. All right, so those are going to be able to do different things. Mostly they're going to track your influence in these different regions, and they're going to mark when you own a building. So what we'll do is we're going to start out, we're going to just put 1 on each of these first spots here in each of the regions. Okay, so we've done that. On your player board, you're going to take 1 of each resource to start out. And then the first player is going to start with 7 koku. So I'll grab a 5 and 2 1s, place that here. And then the rest of these little tokens we're going to just sit off to the side and use as we need them for buildings and things like that. So real quick, I'm going to do the same thing with the white to set that person up. So there's that. We're going to place a boat and a boat. They also have their advanced upgraded boat there. And we'll go ahead and drop their little influence trackers here on each spot and get that squared away. All right, we'll move his stuff off to the side. There are some custom dice that's labeled 1 through 6 like normal, but they also have these different emblems on them that are going to match the emblem for each of the regions. So we'll give 1 to each of our players there. We're going to grab our customer cards, and each player gets 2 to start out. I will not flip those over just yet, but we will look at those shortly. And then the last thing to do to set up the game is we're going to do some initial rolls to move our ships into their starting areas, and then do a third roll for each player to see where their dice start off with. So I'm going to do blue first. So I'll roll the dice, and it has a 3 slash this little wheat region. So you're going to take your boat that's at the top and move it 3, 1, 2, 3. And you'll see the spaces on the river are designated by these little blue like lines. So you can easily tell the river spaces. So the first roll is for your top ship. The second roll is for your middle ship. So I got a 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the third roll is for what you're going to start your dice with. So I'm going to start with a 5. So I'll put that over there. So real quick, I'll do the same thing with my opponent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the opponent is going to start with a 1. So just note when you're doing that, you're not triggering any of these starting buildings you're landing on. You're just getting your boats into their spots to start out. A little additional thing, if you want to, is there are these patrons. Each clan has 2. You can shuffle them up and deal each person a patron, or you can do some sort of drafting. But it's just kind of a way to have a different scoring condition sometimes, or gives players like a unique power, like, hey, you can grab, let's see, you may spend 1 divine favor before you roll your die to set it to any number. So you could, instead of using this to only manipulate it 1 number, you can manipulate any number. So if you feel like playing with those, sorry, I almost dropped the cards all over the place, deal those out. We're not going to do that since we're going to just try to teach you the game. And then when there's also a player A that tells you all the different symbols, but they're pretty easy. I think you'll play it once or twice and pick up on all of those. So the game is set up, ready to play. We've rolled our dice. We've moved our ships into their starting areas. And we'll take just 1 minute to break, and then we'll jump into how you take a turn, and then we'll play a few rounds. All right, welcome back. We're going to look at how a turn works. They're pretty easy. I do want to show you on one of these boards, so I'll use the Crane Clan board, that there's a nice description up here of how a turn works. It's very easy to follow, and then some additional things you can do on any turn. So definitely recommend for the new players out there to take a look at that while they're playing. It should help you out. And that is what I'll be using just to kind of make sure that we don't miss anything. So we're going to start. Remember, the Crab Clan is the first player, so they got 7 gold, or Koku. The Crane Clan, I never gave her money, so she gets 8. So there you go, Crane Clan. All right, so the first thing you're able to do, and remember we've already rolled this dice, so we are looking at a 5 slash this region here that's got this like a water lily on it. Okay, so the first thing you're able to do is you can spend your divine favor. So I'm at 2, I could move that down to 1 to change your die 1 amount. So 5 to 4, 5 to 6. Okay, now if you want to do that again, as long as you have divine favor, you could change it again and just spend another 1. And it is important to know that you can go around the world. So a 6 could turn into a 1. So a lot of games where you can manipulate the dice, I find that that is not a rule that they let you do, but in this game you can. So if I had a 5, I could spend 2 divine favor and trigger that to a 1 if I wanted to. And you'll see why you want to change that in a second, but just know that's the first thing that you do on your turn if you want to, but obviously it's totally optional. The second thing you're going to do is choose between 3 different actions, okay? So those actions are going to be broken into build, sail, or deliver. All right, so let's talk about build first because this is the first one listed. And the way build works is you are going to be building one of your building tiles that are in this market out onto the board. And you are going to decide where it goes by what region your dice is. So because I'm using this water lily dice that I rolled, then I am, unless I manipulate my dice, I am limited to building on one of these open spots. So there's only 3 open spots in the water lily region because we had those 2 starting tiles. Now there's a gold amount over here that you can spend of koku. So you'll see 6, 11, 12. So most of the regions have a couple 5s and 6s, and then it jumps up to in the teens. So there's, the faster you build, the cheaper it's going to be. So the way I would build is I could decide which one of those spots I want to build on. Obviously, I'd probably pick the cheapest one, 6. I would pay my 6 koku into there, and then I would choose one of these available buildings. When I do so, I would place it out onto there, and then I would take one of my little tokens we talked about and place it here. That shows that I am the owner of that building. So before we get into what this actually does, let's look at one of the buildings. So we will look at, this one's a lot easier to understand just from a brand new player perspective. So you saw that I put the little token there. So this means you get that reward for buying and building this tile. So you cover that up and you're getting one of these things. Now what's that thing? You're going to see that emblem a lot, and that means influence. And that is what's being tracked over in these 6 region boards or little trackers. So if I place this, if I buy this one and I placed it into the water lily region like so, I would get 1 influence in the water lily region. So I cover up the 1 influence, and then I would take my little token and move, I'm sorry, that's not the water lily region, and move it up 1 section. So it can get a little confusing. You see that this, I placed it sort of in an area that feels like it would be part of this region, but make sure you're looking at the color or the symbol and match up with that, because this one is actually for this region. So I moved it up 1 spot. If you pass any of these rewards, you gain them right then. If not, then you just place it there. All right, so let's put this back. The other thing that you're going to want to pay attention to when you're choosing what to buy are these emblems on either side. So the emblem on this side is what happens for the person who sails to that building. So we haven't talked about sailing yet, but essentially they're going to be coming up and down the river, and when you land on a space, there will be 4 buildings touching every space, and you're going to trigger all those buildings. So if I place this out here, I'm now making it available that whoever lands in this section can grab 2 influence for the water lily region. So I'm putting that out there. Now my boats can do it, but also the white boats can now land there and gain influence in this region. On the flip side though, by owning it, I also get this back region if someone lands on it. So if I'm got that out there, let's just pretend the white boat lands on this. The white boat gets 2 influence here, 1, 2, but because they use my building, I'm going to gain a silk from the bank and put it in my spot. So if you've ever played Lords of Waterdeep, it's similar to that in you have the buildings around the board. and when you're the owner, you get a discount or a extra advantage, but other players can use them. So if that's your action you take, then you cannot sail, you cannot deliver. You're only going to take one of those three actions. All right. We'll do some stuff with this down here. You'll see that it's missing one, but we'll kind of talk about that in the cleanup area. Okay, so if you have decided you do not want to build, maybe you don't have the koku for it because it costs 6 and maybe you're broke and have none. Your other options, the second one is to sail. So sail just means you're going to move the amount of spaces that the number is. So 5. Um, there we go. Sorry, it was out of focus. So if I want to move a ship 5, I'll look at the board and you can move either ship. It doesn't matter if it's the top or the bottom one. We'll talk about going off the river in just a minute, but for right now, let's just say I'm going to grab this one and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so I'm in that space and I'm going to trigger all 4 spots that it's touching. Now the empty spaces, they have a little koku emblem there. You're going to just get 1 koku for each spot. So I would get 1, 2, 3 koku. And then I would trigger this one, which is give me a silk from the bank and also draw a new customer card and then discard a customer card. All right, so kind of let you swap. We'll talk about customer cards for the third action. But you'll see that when the board is kind of empty like this, you're going to gain a lot of koku from moving. But as more buildings come out, you'll get different things. Now, if there was a building here that either myself or the white boat owned, I would trigger, the front side because I landed on it, and then I would trigger the back side if I owned it, and if I didn't and the white owned it, then she would get to trigger that. So that's how the movement works with just a regular, move 5 from up there. Now, if you're down here and you get to the end of the river, you're going to wrap around, and you're not going to count this as a spot. So you're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, before you trigger these, there's a reminder down here of some things that's got to happen. First, we're going to get rid of this this tile and move all these up and refill it from here. And why are you doing that? Because it speeds the game along. So the more times people are going through the river, the more tiles you're using. And remember, that's how the end of the game is going to be triggered. You can gain 3 koku or 1 of any type of resource. And then this is a reminder here of if you have delivered to this specific type of customer, which I think is a merchant, then she will have a power listed on her card that you will need to do. All right, so in summary, sailing is take the number on your die, move that amount, trigger all the things on the building. The owners check to see what's on the back side of the tile, and they need to trigger that. And if you wrap around, you need to do those 3 things. So that is simple enough. And then the last action you can take is to deliver. And that has to do with your customer cards. So there's a lot of different customer cards, but I think there's, I guess there's 5 maybe different people. And so we'll just use the noble as an example. This is what has to be on your dice for you to be able to turn it in. So, I had the 5 on the dice, the water lily. Neither one of my customers is a 5. So unless I wanted to use a divine favor and manipulate the dice down to a 4 or a 3, then on this turn I could not turn these in. If it was a 5, we'll pretend as long as I had 2 silk and 2 rice, I could say, hey, I'm turning this customer card in. And then you basically just read these areas of the card. This check mark is something that happens right now. The little recycle thing means something that you're going to be watching for the rest of the game. And then the bottom is an additional scoring option that you get at the end of the game. So you're going to score a lot of points off of customer cards. And if not the individual cards, there's a little chart up here that as you turn in up to 6 cards, if you score 6 cards, you get 27 points. That compared to someone who only turns in one gets 2 points. So these are really valuable. So you'll want to keep an eye on these and kind of make sure that you are meeting their requirements to turn in a customer card. If you turn in a customer card, remember, again, you either build, sale, or turn in a card. You don't ever do multiples of those. Once you turn it in, you put it somewhere in front of you where you know that you've turned it in. And then you're going to draw 2 more customer cards and then discard one. And the one you discard could be one of the ones you had already had in your hand. So you can always keep the best one. After you have basically chosen your action, then everyone, or you, not everyone, is going to check these cards and see if you can claim the masteries, is what they're called. And you'll see like this one says own 3 buildings of any of the same type. So if I bought the 3rd port for me, then I own this. And I could say, well, I'm claiming that. I would take this card, put a little tile or a little blue marker on that and get 5 points. That's the victory point symbol. So in a 2-player game, the first person to get these gets them and no one else can. In a 3 or 4-player game, you'll see that there's some more options kind of competing for that. So you would check that and make sure that was squared away. If you took any buildings, say we took this, we would move that up and take from the arrow 1 stack. So we would do that. Just put that back there. And then you would re-roll your dice so it's prepared for next turn. And then at that point, it's the next player's turn. So that is how a normal turn works. There's not a ton of options, but it allows you to play really quickly through. And especially I like the whole, I've already rolled my dice for next turn. So while the opponent is playing, I can be deciding kind of what I want to do with my 1. Since there's not a ton changing between turns, yeah, the other person could put out buildings, which might affect me. But if they're just sailing or turning in customer cards, that's not really impacting me. So, players that have analysis paralysis, they can go ahead and get that out of the way during the player's turn. And then when it's their turn, it should be pretty snappy. So the last thing I'll talk about as far as turns go is that at some point, all of these building tiles are going to get either used or recycled through here. And you'll see that it opens up this space. It's for the emperor. And the way that works is as soon as that happens, you basically pretend the emperor's boat is coming down the river. And so every spot you would just, start up here and say, who owns any of these? Trigger the owner reward. Next spot, owner reward. Next spot, owner reward. So it's kind of a way about halfway through the game to get a whole lot of resources if you own buildings. Now, if you haven't built buildings in the first half, then you are going to miss out on a lot of that. And then from then on out, you'll be filling this up with Era 2, which are maybe a little more powerful in the things that they give out. And then you'll see when the last one is built, it unveils this. So whoever builds the last one and unveils that gets 5 additional points. And then all other players get 1 extra turn. And after that, they are done. And the game is over. And you score up all the victory points that you've basically gotten from your influence tracks, from your customer cards, and things like that. I don't want to go into the points for this just yet. We'll talk about that at the end. I'll do like a little scoring, go over all the scoring with you then. So I'm going to make sure that this gets reset if I moved anything around that's not in the right spot. And we will actually play a few turns so you can see how the real game works. All right, welcome back. So we are going to actually play through a couple turns of this game so you can see exactly how it works. I will probably not be picking the smartest actions as we go through, solely because I want you to be able to see all three types that you have on a turn, as well as some of these symbols, what they mean, all those types of things. And then at the end, we'll talk about scoring and how that works. So if you watch the earlier setup videos and stuff, you'll remember that we've got our boats in their starting positions. I've re-rolled the die because I mess with it so much. So blue player who is first is got a 1, and then our white player who is going second has rolled a 5. Everything else is pretty much set up still as we had it. So we'll go ahead and look at player 1, which is the blue, and how they can use their 1 here on the dice best. So if you quickly remember, the 3 actions we have are going to be either build a building, and I would have to build that in region 1 up here, which is this mountainous area. I could sail a ship, either that ship or that one space, and collect the rewards. Or if I had enough things to turn in a customer card that had a 1 up here, then I would do that. Also, remember, you can adjust your die by using these divine favors. Each one allows you to change the value up or down by 1. And remember that you can go around from a 6 to a 1 or a 1 to a 6. So there's those options as well. So I've got $7, and I think I'll buy a building, because up here in the 1 area there is a $5 building, so that's pretty cheap. So what I'll do is I'll turn in my $5 and just place that in the bucket, and then I get to choose one of these buildings to place down. And if you'll remember, and I'm just going to grab this one, um, when you choose a building, this number here is going to be how much influence you gain. This action or reward is going to be what the person gets when their boat lands on the spot. And this action or reward is what I will gain when a boat lands there, because they're using my building. So I'm going to grab this one. We might as well go ahead and use it. And so I'm going to take that and place it in the 5 region, or the spot there. I've already paid my $5. I'm going to take one of my little tokens to signify that I own it, and I'm going to cover up that 2. And now I got 2 influence in the region where I placed it, which is this 1 mountainous region. So I'm going to take my influence marker and I'm going to say 1, 2, because I covered up a 2 influence. And I landed on a porcelain, so I will grab a porcelain and throw it in my on my little player board there. Remember, once you do an action, you can't do another, so you're never going to build and then sail. So I've taken my action. We do need to refresh this over here, because I did take a spot, so you'll see the yellow arrows. So this one will slide up to there. I now have an empty spot, and I'll take the top from arrow 1 and place it right there to fill that back up. And then I need to re-roll my die for the next turn. So on the next turn I'll have a 4, and that was my turn. So we move over to the white player, who has a 5, or if you're using a region, this water lily region. And let's see. I think I will travel, so I'll sail. So you're going to move 5 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each location on the river should be touching 4 buildings. So you'll see that in this kind of, it's not really a square, but in this spot, you've got this, 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 and this touching. So every place you go, you will see 4 emblems that hook on to one of these building spaces, and that's what you're going to trigger. So the empty spaces, when there are no buildings there, you get 1 koku. So I'll take 1 here and 1 here. I'll grab my $2 and I'll place them just over here on my Crane Clan board, which you cannot see. We'll trigger this action here, which, like we just talked about, that is an influence the little, I guess it's kind of like a banner or a flag. Um, I don't know what you would call that, but the white player is going to gain 2 influence in whatever region that this is built. So it's the water lily. So 1, 2, and now just like I did up there, we're going to grab a rice, place that on the Crane Clan their board, and then the last one is to trigger this action. And whenever you see that little red or burgundy flag there, that is your victory point um, symbol. And you can see that it matches the victory point symbol over here. So I'm going to take my white score marker and move it up 2 because of that 2. We did not do any buildings, so we don't need to move that. So there's nothing to refresh. So the white player is just going to roll their die for the next turn and sit it over to the side. I did notice I did not give the Crane Clan player any of their starting resources, so let me grab those out for them. And then we are back on to the blue side. So that was a pretty easy round. Real quick, we're going to just take a look at these cards as we move forward. Remember, from setup, you'll get 3 of these mastery cards, and the first player to complete them scores the 5 points. So let's just really quickly look at an example of these 3. Remember, there's 6 in the game, but so the first person to own 3 buildings of the same type. So you'll remember from setup that the buildings are 4 different colors. So as soon as someone owns 3 of the same building, they can get this 5 points. This one is reach this, whatever that is, flower emblem in any region. And so in all the regions down here, this space here has that same emblem on it. So basically the first person to reach that in one of the regions is going to get this 5 points. And then deliver to 3 different customer types. So these are the 5 different types of customers you have on the customer cards. So once someone has delivered to at least one of 3 different of those, then they'll get those 5 points. So I just want to go over those right then so that we have those in mind as we are playing. So for blues customer cards, right now I need 2 silk and 2 rice, or I need 3 silk. So maybe I'll see if I can get some silk here. So let's go ahead and move forward with our 4. And let's see what happens if I do this one, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is a good way to get a silk. Or I could use this 4 and go around the river. So let's do that because I want to make sure everyone understands how that works. So I'm going to take this bottom ship and say 1, 2. When you get to the end of the river, you're going to hop up here and say 3, 4. So do not count this as a space. So you see I did 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so before we trigger these things, we need to discuss and do these actions. So you just work top to bottom. So the top one says that building space at the red X you need to get rid of. So this is going to come off the board. You're then going to go ahead and move these up, and the next arrow 1 is going to get put down. So that's just a way to keep the game moving. Every time someone completes their journey is what this is called. Then it kind of moves the buildings through. The next thing is either get $3 or 3 koku, or choose one of the available resources. So I'm going to go ahead and take that silk, since we just discussed how I'm going to need those for the customer cards. And then if I had a marker here because I had delivered to a merchant, then I would get to trigger her action. But I don't, so we might be able to look at that if that card comes up. It's actually this card. So if I get another silk, we can handle that, and I can teach you how that works. But now let's come over here and let's trigger all these. So remember, I've got 1, 2 that are empty, so that's 2 koku. This spot gets me 3 koku, so I'm going to get 5 altogether. So I will go ahead and grab a 5. And then, just like down there, this gives me 2 victory points. So I'll move my spot, 1, 2. And again, you do not ever do multiple actions. So sailing was my one action. We don't have anything to deal with down there. So I'm going to roll my dice, and I got another 4. And so now it is on to white. So they have a 3/wheat region. And they've got quite some money here. So let's have them build on this 6. So remember, because they rolled a 3, they're limited to building in this region unless they manipulated their dice. But we will build here 6 because it is the cheapest. So they're going to turn in a 5 and a 1. And then we need to pick from these spots down here, or these buildings. So let's see, they need rice and porcelain. They actually already have 2 rice, so that's nice for their customer card. So let's do this so we can talk about this yellow emblem. So they're going to pick this building, which means they're going to move up in the influence of that region 1 spot. When people land on this building to use it, they're going to gain a rice. And then the white player is now, every time someone uses this building, whether it be them or someone else, they're going to score a victory point, and they're going to gain 1 divine favor. So if you'll remember from setup, the divine favor is down here on this little track. So as you use it, it'll go down. So this emblem here means that they would get to push it back up 1 notch. So it's going to be a way that they're able to continue to kind of refill their divine favor, because this is the only way you get divine favor back if you are using it. All right, so we'll slide that there on the 6. We'll take one of white's markers and cover up that 1, so they get 1 influence. Oh, you know what? I stuck that in the wrong region. Sorry. Do have to be careful about that. So put that there. Get 1 influence and move that up 1 notch. All right, so they did a building. So we need to move this up, and we need to refill that. And then we need to roll our dice. 1. All right, so for the blue, I have a 4. And one of my customer cards is a 4 right here. I don't have enough rice, but I'm going to just give myself another rice just so we can see how this action works. Okay, so I have a 4 there. I have a card that's a 4. So my action this turn is going to be deliver for this customer card. So like I just said, you do have to make sure that the dice match with what you rolled. They do. I need to sell off these resources. So I'm going to sell my 2 rice. I'm going to sell my 2 silk. All right, so then we're going to look at these pieces of text. And as soon as we complete this card, which we did, we're going to do this. So this emblem here means you're going to upgrade your ship, either one of your ships, to the upgraded one, and gain 2 influence in the Badger region, which is the 4 region. So let's do that first. So I'm going to take my upgraded ship here, and I'll just swap it out for this top one up here. Throw that there. And remember, it said also gain 2 influence in the Badger. 1, 2. So that gains me a porcelain. All right, let's look back at our card. The second row here is going to be, you see a little recycling. That's something that's going to happen every time throughout the rest of the game. So this says after your upgraded ship sails, gain 1 victory point if you visit at least 1 red X. So sometimes you'll see an icon like this with a red X. Sometimes you'll see it with a green check mark. A red X means a building that you do not own. So if this ship sails and I land here and visit this spot that the white owns, I will now get an additional victory point. If you saw that same type of thing and it said green check mark, then you would get an additional victory point every time you visit the building you own. And then down here is an additional scoring requirement, or not requirement, but a scoring advantage you get at the end of the game underneath that trophy. So every red building I own, again, the green check mark means I own it, I'm going to get a victory point. So now that I have completed this, I would put it in somewhere in a pile of cards that I've completed. I am then allowed to pick up 2 customer cards, add this one to my hand, and now I have to discard one. Okay, so I'm going to discard the noble because I've already done a noble. And if you'll remember our mastery card from up there, we are trying to be the first person to deliver to 3 different customers. So I'll discard that one. So again, delivering to a customer is an action. So there's nothing else to do as far as sailing or building. I cannot do those. So I would then just need to roll my dice and move on. All right, so I'm going to take one more turn with the white player who has a 1. And let's see. So let's move it here. So I get 1, 2, 3 Koku. I get 1 rice. And then you'll see that I'm going to get a divine favor. So let me move this over here. So I had 2 divine favor. I would just move this up, and now I have 3 divine favor that I can use. Remember, the divine favor is the way to manipulate the dice. So at that point, I would roll this, and my next turn would start with a 4. All right, so I think you see how that works. It's pretty standard in that you just keep going, going, going. Once the era 1 buildings fall off and you get this emperor image, what you would do is you'd pretend a ship was going down the river starting at the top, and the owners get all the different ownership rewards. So I would say, hey, the emperor ship is here. I own this one, so I get a victory point and $1. Goes down. Here's another building the white player owns, so the white player would get a divine favor and a victory point. And you would just keep going down, and by then you'd probably have a lot more buildings out. And then you'll start using these buildings to refill the market, and once they are out, the player who runs out, causes this to run out, gets 5 points, and then every other player goes one more time. So let's talk about the scoring real quick, because at that point, at the end of the game, you'd be ready to score. Obviously, you'd be using, you'd have your victory points marked off for the victory points you gained during the game. So those markers would be, up here in the 20s or whatever. And then you're going to first score all of your influence. So we have not really looked at what one of these little tokens are called, or chits, or tiles, or whatever you want to call them. If you'll remember from the setup, we randomly place them out, and because we're a 2-player game, we place them on the 2-player side. There is a different side. But what this means is whoever is, sorry, I knocked the camera. Whoever's furthest in this influence track at the end of the game is going to get 5 points. The second player is going to get 2 points if they are within 5 spots of the winner of the influence track. So there's 2 things to note there, or maybe just one thing. In this instance, I would get 5 points. The white player would get 0 points because they haven't even started the track. So the white player is not going to get rewarded for having a big donut on the influence track. So you do have to, at least move out into here. But if this were the finishing status, I would get 5 points. The white player second is within 2, they would get, or within 5, they get 2 points. Now, if I was so far along, it looked like this, I would get 5 points because I've moved all the way down here. But the white is not within 5 spaces, so they would get only 0 points. And so you're going to look at each one of these. There's always one that only rewards points for one person, but all the rest have that stipulation on the It must be within 5, and they're always within 5. So you can keep that in mind. So you'll count these down, get all them victory points set out for those. You'll then look up here at this chart, and each player will figure out how many customer cards they turned in, and you will get the required amount of victory points depending on that. So the most is 6. If you go above 6, you still only get 27 points. So you'll give those out to each player. And then lastly, you're going to take all of your customer cards that you delivered, and you're going to double check this down here and award points for it. So I want to mention one thing real quick. If you deliver to the same type of customer, each of these cards scores separately. So like the artisan always scores 1 point for every 3 resources. So if I ended with 3 rice, this artisan would score me 1 point. This artisan would also score me 1 point. You don't like put them together. They're separate people who score separate amounts. So every card you complete, you're going to look at that bottom area, and you're going to get your points for that. All right, so that is the game. It's pretty easy. It's pretty snappy, I'll say that. The turns go by quick, as you can see, but there's enough decision making as far as when to put buildings out, and especially knowing that your opponent is going to be able to use buildings. So, if you put something out that has a victory point or an influence, you're now opening it up for your opponent to be able to use those same buildings. But hopefully your reward on the backside is worth it. But yeah, it's a fun game. So like I said in the I believe in the setup, there is no solo mode official, but there is a solo mode posted on Board Game Geek. So if you stick around for the last chapter, I'm going to just quickly explain that and how it works, who posted it and everything, if you're interested in that. If not, then thank you for watching the video. Make sure to go check out the website at boardgamebreakdown.com for our text reviews. Leave us comments, thumbs up, whatever. I appreciate you watching, and see you next time. All right, welcome back. We're going to quickly touch on the unofficial solo mode for River of Gold. You can find this on Board Game Geek. It was posted by William Griffin, and I'll put his username down below. But you can go search River of Gold and find this file in the files page. The publisher or the designer, one of them, has like signed off on it and has even commented on the way this works in a thread on Board Game Geek. So that's really cool to see a fan make something that gets the attention of the designer and stuff. So we'll quickly touch on it. First, you're going to need 9 cards that he gives you in a PDF file that you're going to print out. Now, I don't have the 9 cards printed because what I end up doing is just using like 9 deck of cards, so 1 through 9, to symbolize them, and then just reference the cards from my phone. But these cards, if you've ever played any sort of like Stonemaier games where it uses an Automa factory type presentation, it's similar. So the board is going to get set up basically the same way that we did earlier. You're going to set up the same thing as a 2-player game. The opponent, the solo opponent, gets the same ships. It gets influence markers on each of these. It will get 1 face down customer card, so you will not know what card it's working on, and it only gets 1 of these instead of 2. And then on its player board, it doesn't really even need a player board. It's not going to use ever divine favor. It's not going to use resources or money. So it basically just needs its player pieces and a die. Okay, so on your turn, the game works exactly the same. You're going to do everything that we talked about in either the action chapter or the gameplay chapter, depending on which one you used or want to watch, or if you watch both of them. So when it's the opponent's turn, it will have, it will have rolled a die. So let's say it's a 4. And then I'm going to just kind of pretend these are the 9 cards. You're going to shuffle them up and you're going to flip over the first card. So let's say this is the 3rd card, and let's say the first 3 cards are move upper ship. The next 2 cards are move the lower ship. So that's 5 of the cards. Cards 6 and 7 are to build. And then cards 8 and 9 are to turn in that face down customer card. So what I typically do is, like I said, these are 1 through 9. If I flip it over, if it's a 3, then I know 3 is move upper ship. Now, obviously, you can print the cards out that he gave in the file for a more official thing. But so in this scenario, remember he has rolled a 4. So I'm going to move him back just a little bit. Move upper ship, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what the opponent collects is basically just influence and victory points. It's not going to collect this money. So it would get 2 points for this spot, and it would ignore all those. And then that would be its turn, and it rolls for the next time. So it will move up the influence tracks. If it gets either 8 or 9, those cards that are to deliver a customer card, you'd flip over the customer card it had. It does not have to pay any of these things, and you would just basically trigger any of these that are applicable that have to do with placing a marker, having to do with getting victory points or influence. There is a note on the card or on the instruction booklet when it moves a ship around the world or around the river or whatever. You are still going to do this. You are going to skip that, getting 3 points or a resource since it doesn't get those, but it does get 3 victory points every time it goes around the river. Okay. If it turns in a customer card, it just gets another one face down that it then will work on eventually. If it builds, so if you get card 6 or 7 and it builds, what you're going to do is you're going to look around whatever region it rolled. So let's pretend he had rolled a 2, because he did roll a 2, so we don't even have to pretend. And we'd look it up here and we'd see a building spot that is worth 6, 9, or 12. It's always going to take the cheapest spot, and it's always going to take the most, the tile that gives it the most influence by building it. So it would be this 4. If there's a tie for the spot up here, so there were 2 6s, it would take the location that's furthest down the river in that region. If there's a tie here for the most influence points, it'll always take the leftmost one. So in this case, it would take this one. You would still put a white marker on it to signify that the opponent owns it. He would still move 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. He does not get the rice because he does not care about that. And then his turn would be over. He'd roll the dice and you'd move on. So it's very, very similar to the normal game. I really like it because there's not a ton of upkeep with the opponent. Since it doesn't have resources and all that, you're really just very quickly flipping a card over, moving a ship, putting a building out, boom, roll the dice, move on with your turn. So if you're interested in the solo game, please go check that out at Board Game Geek. Again, William Griffin. I'll put the username again down there. You can go to the files section and grab that. It's really fun. So thanks for watching. If you are interested in other videos or reviews, please go check out BoardGameBreakdown.com or check out our YouTube channel. Hopefully where you're finding this video right now. Make sure to subscribe. I appreciate everyone watching and have a good one.